Hi, everyone. It is Shaman Vizzy again from Long Island Adoptive Families, and we are here with another interview. And today we want to talk to Executive Director of You Gotta Believe, and her name is Mary Keane. So thanks for joining us today, Mary. How are you?
It's a pleasure to always see you. It's you're just always such fun and such great energy. I don't know how you do it personally, but I
Oh,
love
neither do I, actually.
watching you. Yeah,
I like doing it. My favorite thing in the world is to get the information out to people. That's our
mm-hmm.
community needs information. I found that when I was going through my journey, I didn't have a lot of
Yeah,
information.
yeah,
And sometimes the internet really confuses you. So sometimes getting it from the
yeah,
horse's mouth, sorry to
yeah,
call you a horse, but
yeah.
horse's
No,
mouth is actually the best.
you've done an amazing job of that. I mean, I spoke to somebody earlier who was an adoptive dad on Long Island, and I couldn't believe he didn't know of you. I just feel like every adopted person on Long Island has to know you because every other one I know says,
I have,
"Oh, of
I have a
course,
big, I have
you
a
know
big
her."
mouth. I have a big mouth.
It serves you well, and it's for a
Thank
good
you.
cause.
Well, today I wanted to have the community get to know you and what you do at You Gotta Believe and what You Gotta Believe is. So I'm going
Mhm.
to run through a few questions. And the
Sure.
first one is, how did you personally get involved or start your journey through adoption and foster care for everyone to know a little bit about you?
Sure. So I actually started on my own before You Gotta Believe. At the time, I'm not even sure that You Gotta Believe was working much. They didn't have a contract or anything. And I call it sort of a midlife crisis. And I decided that I was newly separated from a long relationship, and I had always wanted kids, but I never wanted little kids. I don't like little kids, that can get out there. Everybody knows it already. They're fine in short spurts. I love my grandkids, but they have to be here with their parents. So I always loved teenagers. I was doing some volunteer work with teens, specifically LGBT teens, and I found out that a lot of them were in foster care,
Okay.
and it seemed to me like a double whammy. They're already gay and they're having challenges. They're in foster care. That's especially difficult. And then one day I went in private work. I was doing some grant writing. I went to a residential treatment center, and I just saw over 100 kids, teenagers, alone in the world. I mean, that's what it looked like to me, and I remember how difficult it was being a teenager. And so I just said, I'm in a place in my life, I have to do something.
Okay.
I can't walk away from this. And at the time I was living in a studio apartment, so when I do things, I tend to really take them on in a big way. So I wound up buying in very short order. I bought a very large old Victorian that had 12 bedrooms when I bought it. It was in terrible shape. We spent about a year renovating it.
Oh, okay.
Licensed. Someone I knew in the field recommended a specific agency where they were very welcoming. They were totally supportive. I got licensed. At the time, I said I just wanted lesbian teens,
Okay.
because I said they had, extra challenges. And actually, I live in Westchester County, so I called Westchester County and said I want to get licensed, but that's what I want. So they said, well, we don't have any, but we have teen moms.
Okay.
So at that time, I said, no, that's not what I want. So I went to the city and I got licensed in the city. And after I got licensed, they told me the same thing. They didn't have any lesbian teens. Would I consider some straight girls? So I said, well, it's not their fault. Um, we have to be open. I have to be accepting, and so forth and so on. So I said, okay, I'll start. I'll start with them. So 20 years ago, this year in February, um, a 15-year-old girl came to me from a crisis unit, a crisis center, which is on a residential treatment program, and that was the beginning of my learning what I needed to know. She started my education,
Okay.
because training itself, that I got, certainly, and that I think a lot of people get, is not really all that useful in terms of real life, experiences and stuff.
Right.
So Jennifer started my education, And then, again, because I had a big house, they just filled it up pretty quickly. And I had a lot of kids and they taught me a lot. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I actually even met Pat O'Brien. I
Okay.
was speaking somewhere. I had started speaking with ACS in the city about older kids and things. And he was in the audience. And then he said, um, you're already doing what we believe in, and why don't you join us? And then he got a contract, and he said, I have a contract, I can pay you so much. You'll make a lot less money than you're making now, but you'll be doing something worthwhile. So somehow he convinced me to do that, and that was
Always does.
16 years ago now. So I've been at You Gotta Believe ever since. And my reason for joining was simply to find more people to do what I was doing.
Okay.
And part of that was not just that there were obviously a lot more kids, that I couldn't take them all, but that it was so rewarding
Okay.
that I wanted to spread the message
Okay.
to people. What a powerful experience it is. And also be part of their training and support for them, and work with kids and find them families.
So let's delve into what is You Gotta Believe, and was there a need that You Gotta Believe started for? I know, yes,
Yeah.
there is, but
Yeah.
tell the community what that need was,
Right.
why it
Sure.
started.
So absolutely. So Pat O'Brien is the founder. He's still very invested in the industry, and he was a social worker at the time. And he recognized that older kids were just aging out. They were just, at 18, 19, 20, 21, they were expected to just survive in the world on their own. And he himself talks about he didn't achieve independent living, which is the term that's always used, until he was about 43, because he got married, he adopted a kid that didn't work out so well. So he left his wife in the home that they had, and he went back to live with his parents. And he thought it would be like 6 months or something, but it was years before he was able to get out on his own. As a social worker, he wasn't ever making money. So he said our expectations of these kids was unreasonable.
Right.
And to put them out in the world like that at any age was unconscionable. And they all deserve families. They hadn't done anything to lose their families. It wasn't their fault. And to think that they can just survive on their own. He said it's a recipe for disaster, and he was determined to stop it. And he knew that every one of the kids could be connected to an unconditionally committed parent.
Well, what's the difference between, say, You Gotta Believe and, say, DSS? What's the differences between that?
Right. So they're just concerned about taking care of a kid on a temporary basis through a certain time period.
Right.
And in New York, that's really 21. And in a lot of states, it's actually still 18. Foster care ends at 18. So, the idea at 21, most kids are in college and they go home after college, until they get a decent job that they can live on their own. Now it's, New York, Long Island, it's impossible to, get a job that you can afford to have your own apartment or place to live and stuff like that. So, there are national statistics which show that more and more kids in their 30s and 40s are still living at home with their parents. That's men and women. Men are living home longer. They're looking for a replacement for their wife, I always say, but their mother. But they're living at home, and it's just, it's crazy to think, and we continue to do it, to let these kids go out in the world. So they're alone in the world. They have no skill sets. They can't get decent jobs. They don't do well with education. I mean, all the statistics are there. They have terrible, terrible outcomes. Foster care is like a pipeline to adult welfare, homelessness, incarceration, just terrible outcomes. The girls, I think some 70% have babies by the time they're 21, and that's just trying to form a family because they want love and they think that's the solution. But most of those, many of those girls, their babies wind up in foster care, and so it becomes generational.
So You Gotta Believe, would you say You Gotta Believe focuses its attention on taking um, older older teens or older children and focuses on getting them adopted versus say DSS was focused on reunification? Is that a kind of
Well,
thing?
yeah, so we get the kids that come to us are past the point of reunification for whatever reason. You know, the family is not able to do it and enough time has passed. Now, we want the relationships to continue. People, you know, kids need that connection with their family, but the family's not able to step up and be a real strong parent advocate for the kids.
Okay.
So we totally support reunification. It's just not something we work on. We work with the kids once it's determined that they're not going to be reunified. Before that, we really don't touch it. We lean on the system. I think reunification is often not really done as well as it could be. I think the system doesn't treat families with sufficient respect and really support them. And so it winds up frequently, I think, estranging families and kids who were in care. You know, the first problem is that many of the kids should not even be removed. Most of the cases, I think some 85% are neglect, and neglect is caused frequently by just socioeconomic challenges that people have. It's documented again, racial disparities in foster care, economic disparities. So, you know, if we did more to support families, we wouldn't break them up in the first place.
Okay.
And then once they're broken up, it just creates a divide. I've seen in so often in families that it's difficult to even repair it.
Okay.
For some time. So what we'll start working with kids when somebody else determines that they're not going to be able to go home. And so what we're trying to do is find them an additional family, not really a replacement.
Okay.
For the family, an additional family, and someone who's going to be unconditionally committed to them, who's going to support their relationship with their family. And they may or may not get legally adopted. That's one of the things that You Gotta Believe likes to stress, that while everybody, you know, sort of likes the idea of locking in an adoption and saying, you know, this is my kid, they can't go back. Many of our kids don't want to be legally adopted because, one, they may feel it's disloyal to their birth family. They may be afraid because they know a lot of kids who were adopted as infants and then were put back in the system. Those are we call them broken adoptions. And we work with a lot of kids who were thrown back in the system as teenagers, either because they were too challenging, they wanted to reconnect with their family, and adoptive parents got upset by that, or the kids are queer and families say, I didn't adopt that. You know, that's not what I wanted. So they have the option to put them back in care. And so we work with them. So those kids, you know, to approach them and say, do you want to be adopted? They're like, you out of your mind. I'd have to be crazy because I just went through that. So we talk about, You Gotta Believe talks about moral adoption.
Okay.
Which is simply that unconditional commitment that is your kid, whether you legally adopt them or not.
Okay.
So some of my kids are legally adopted and some are just my kids. There's no paper, but they're all equally my kids. So, you know, they know it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter.
So say, for instance, someone is interested in going to You Gotta Believe, and they're brand new. All they say is, oh, I wanna foster a kid or adopt a kid. What is the most important thing people who are coming to You Gotta Believe should know,
right,
before they delve really into this
right,
and go forward?
right.
What's the most important thing you think?
So we consider our classes educational, and the way that you decide if this is for you. We welcome everybody. We don't want you to think you know what you want to do. You might think you know what you want to do, but we're going to give it to you real. And we're going to help you decide And we will also decide if we think you're not going to be good at this. And we will not license you. If you have certain red flags, like I think one of my biggest questions always when people start is to find out what their expectations are. And this is, people come and I say they reach a point in their life, they think they're mature, they think they can do this. They're ready to have a family, they're ready to be a perfect parent. And you're right, and they think they're going to get the perfect kid and it's going to be storybook. And we're going to make very clear to them that's not going to happen. But, and part of that is that everyone who teaches our classes is an adoptive parent of older kids. And we have alumni of the foster care system also co-facilitating all of our classes. So again, our input is real. And it is the most beautiful, most powerful, most important thing you could ever do in your life. But it may also challenge you in many ways that you're not expecting. So, and we tell people that I tend to stress that this is service. This is not something that you're going to get gratitude and appreciation from the kids. They don't have that to give. Maybe somewhere later down the road. My kids are 30s and 40s now, I'm buried in appreciation, but that's not going to come. It's been 20 years. So, you can't go in looking for that. You can't go in with this dream. You have to recognize that this is something, I think it's one of the most profound things. I think you will literally save a kid's life, but don't think the kid is going to acknowledge that you're saving their life.
Right.
No, you just have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to give and give and give. And these kids are like bottomless pits. So, so sometimes in class, people will give off red flags. I had somebody recently who said he had heard kids talking the week before. And he said, I was really surprised that, they didn't seem to appreciate their parents who had gotten them out of a very bad situation. I said, sorry, if you want appreciation, and I tell this to everybody, get a dog. The dog is going to love you to death no matter what you do. If you don't come home, you come home, whatever. That's what dogs do. But kids are incapable of doing that.
Right.
So you can't need that. You can't expect that.
Well, when someone does come to You Gotta Believe, I know it's lots of steps through the process, but what kind of process do you have in just a little gist so that way
Yeah.
get an idea? So I make a call.
Right.
And now what?
You'll get a call back almost immediately. You'll probably get a call back from more than one person to welcome you. That's something that doesn't happen necessarily to other agencies or, this big bureaucratic system. So we'll call you immediately. We'll sort of explore what brought you to this point. And we'll invite you with no further screening, nothing. Just come to the classes. If you say, you really think you want to do this, or you tell us you're not even sure, you're just putting your foot in. We welcome everybody. Because the classes, as I say, are about you figuring out, can you handle the challenges that we're going to talk about? And our staff figuring out, do we think you're able to handle this? We're responsible for recommending you for a kid and ultimately matching you. So the classes, it's 10 weeks. That's a state requirement. We don't force you to do paperwork if you want to start the paperwork immediately, but you can wait. Sometimes I don't even talk about paperwork at the beginning because it's not the most important thing. I want you to figure out if you can make the kind of commitment that we're looking for. So, and again, we don't just work with older kids. We've had younger kids adopt as well, 6, 7, 8-year-old. And our thing about that is that we're killing the pipeline. Those kids will never get to us when they're teenagers. They will never have to be referred to You Gotta Believe because they will have a family. And we're looking for people who are unconditionally committed and who want somewhat older kids. Certainly, we're not really matching infants or toddlers and things like that. They're mostly older kids. But if we do the training, you decide to get licensed, we agree that you have tremendous potential. one of the challenges is people don't know their triggers,
Hmm.
and we can't always tell their triggers in the safe environment of a classroom, right?
Right.
I say that I wish that I could send our advocates home with somebody for the weekend, because they would come back on Monday because they're so intuitive, and they would tell me what are the people's triggers. Now it's okay, we all have triggers,
Oh, yeah.
and adults usually don't know what they are until they're triggered. They may think, well, I know this is going to piss me off. And then inevitably they call me later and said, well, I had no idea this was going to piss me off, but it really did,
Right.
which is fine. It's all about what are you going to do when you're triggered? And we help people figure that out.
Okay.
You, you can't blame the kid and say, well, this kid's got to go. It's the wrong kid. Because this is not a dating game. This is where you're the adult and you actually have more information about these kids than you would ever have about a birth child. Because to this day, you still can't check off what you want in a birth child, right? You get what you get and you deal with it. So you'll know more about these kids, but there's a lot that's unknown. But
Right.
we work with you once you're licensed to identify a kid for you. And the hope is that you have a sort of an open window about what you're looking for. You can say you want a boy or you want a girl or you want a certain age range. Um, and we'll look for that. And then we'll find out everything we can about that child and inform you. Before, you may not have met the child, you may just have seen the picture on one of the websites or something. So we'll have a call with the people who know the child the best, tell you everything that's known about the child, and you have to make a decision. Can I parent this child? And again, we'll help you make
Okay.
that. And we may say, well, we think this child has too many challenges for you. Let's keep looking. Let's keep looking for another child. Or we'll say, no, we think you'll be able to handle this child. If you think you'll be able to handle their challenges, then we'll move forward. And then what we actually do is, depending on the age of the child, we tell the child we have a family who's interested in you, maybe show them some pictures, and then have them have a conversation or meet in person. And it's really then, it's up to the child to decide if they like you or want to stay with you. And then we begin a visiting process. Now, the visits are,
Is there a certain age that goes with that? Do they have to be a certain age before they just, yeah.
we allow even the younger kids they have to be part of that.
Okay, great.
So, they'll meet the people and they'll say, I like them. I want to spend the day with them. Ultimately, I want to visit where they live. I want to stay overnight or not.
Okay.
And they'll really direct it at that point from the very beginning when the parent says, that's my kid, they have no more decisions to make other than that they're going to parent this kid. And it's in the kid's hands about whether they feel good. Now, I tell people all the time, don't let your ego get blown up if a kid says, they want to go with you, because it may simply mean that it's better than where they are and they're willing to take a chance. These kids are very daring. They're used to a lot of change, a lot of transition. This is the first time in their life they will have had any power in the decision making.
Oh,
In foster care, they're moved from home to home to home with no discussion, no consideration, no pre-meeting of people. They're just moved. So here they're empowered to say, I like these people or I don't like these people. And we're supporting the families throughout all of this. The information gathering, the visitation, and then ultimately, a decision is made sometimes around school schedules to have the kid move in.
okay.
And even there, we've done all the prep work with the family to make sure that they're enrolled in school, they have therapeutic supports in place, depending on where they're coming from. All of that is in place before the kid moves in. And then we continue supporting that family really forever. And again, the supports that we have, all of our staff are parents.
Right.
When when we hire, I remember one of a parent that I had trained years ago, she and her wife adopted two girls. Um, we had a vacancy to support families. So I said to her, was she interested in working? She said, what do I have to do? I said, you have to be the worker that you wish you had when you had your kids, because we were not supporting her. She was being supported by an agency in the city. And then she said, "Oh, that's easy. I can do that." And so she's turned out to be, as all of our staff are, a phenomenal support
Great.
to the families.
Um, I always like to ask, and everyone I interview, I ask this. As you can see, I had 2 seconds to put up some books.
Yes.
But I love to find out from professionals what books they loved going into this. What ones, I mean, you can name a whole bunch. I mean, what ones you loved, which ones you maybe just read now and you're like, oh, this one's
Right.
really good,
Right.
especially for the ones that are just starting off.
Right.
What are the ones, because obviously you can see I have some of the one of the a couple of the majors up there that people go, you definitely need to read this or whatever. But
Right. Right.
what do you like? What do you like to
So
recommend?
we consider we call it like our parenting Bible, is Beyond Consequences, Logic, and Control by Heather Forbes and Brian Post. The two of them, Brian Post grew up in care, and he has a website, the Post Institute. And Heather Forbes was an adoptive parent of two kids from Russia. And she talks about when she had them, uh, the kids coming from Russia tend to be, extremely challenging. They've had trauma that we don't even know about in this country. Um, so she said she was on the bathroom floor every night in the fetal position, crying her heart out because she hated her kids and it was killing her. It was absolutely killing her. But she went on to then, begin to research and study and how to treat traumatized kids. It's uniquely different from raising your own birth children. And so they developed together the first book they did it together. And it's called Beyond Consequences, Logic, and Control because most birth parents are stuck on logic, consequences, and control. And as birth parents, you can do that. Your kids have an attachment to you from birth, but these kids have no attachment to you. They may have no attachment at all because of the abuse that they've experienced.
Right.
That, as I say, we consider our parenting Bible, and those are our two probably lead people who subsequently have written other books. They have websites, Beyond Consequences, the Post Institute, phenomenal trainers, extremely experienced with traumatized kids. So those are some of our favorites. I think Bruce Perry is a phenomenal therapist, also dealing with trauma.
Okay.
One of his books is The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, but he has a lot of he has a bunch of little web stories now talking about trauma during this crisis, because again it resurfaces for our kids in a big way. And so it's just about understanding. For us, if you understand what's behind behaviors, you have a much better reaction to it than if you were not understanding, didn't know what was behind it, and you were just reacting to a behavior.
Right.
There are things, there was a 60-minute special a while ago. Bruce Perry was a big part of it, but it was exactly that. It was about trauma. Oprah Winfrey said it was one of the biggest lessons in her life. And it really came down to asking people, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And you get a totally different sense when you understand what's behind something. So it's the same thing for our kids. It's when you understand the trauma, and it won't all come out in the informational meeting that you do up front. It will come out as the kid begins to trust you, and they'll tell you things they've never told anybody. So, so Bruce Perry, there are lots and lots of course, some of the others are escaping me now, but I think if you start with those two websites, those two folks, you've got a foundation that'll take
Great.
really far.
Okay. So my last question, I never word this right. I get tongue tied when I say this. If you were to go back to your young self and tell yourself something now about what you should have known, what do you think that would be if you could do that?
So it's funny you say that. I always imagined a very large family. I don't know why. Again, and I didn't want to give birth, um, but I wanted a large, and I wanted a large mixed family. It's very clear. It's like the earliest thing I remember, and I don't know what it comes from. My parents were from large families. I had three brothers, but um, I wanted a large family, and I wanted a very large mixed family. I wasn't sure how I was going to get to it. But what I would have done is actually started this much earlier. Um, I was delayed because I was in a relationship who didn't want to do this and stuff, and I sort of went along with that. Luckily, that ended, so I didn't really start until I was 50, almost 50. That's why I say it was like a midlife crisis. Um, but it has been the most rewarding thing I could have done, and I would have done it earlier. You know, that's about the only thing I think about.
Okay.
It's been to watch these kids blossom um, without, you really just, my thing is you just have to be there. You can screw up because I screwed up a lot. I said a lot of stupid things. I had to apologize ad nauseum, but I never said, you got to go. I'm
Right.
getting rid of you. And so to me, that is the only thing. You can't cross that line, because if you cross that line, you've undermined whatever trust you've developed, no matter how long
Right.
it's been. But if you can keep from saying that, and I think that once you decide that you're a parent, you just would never say that. You wouldn't say. For us, these kids are as if they were your birth kids. So, you're stuck with them, and there are days you won't like them, but that's okay. They're not always likable. Um, and then kids, going
Hey,
through,
I'm not always likable.
of course, and kids going through teen years are like monsters.
Uh-huh. I
A
was.
relatively short period, and it passes. And then you've got these wonderful young adults, and as they grow older, I watch my kids parent their kids, and it's like it's miraculous to watch them, how well they do given their trauma. And what I always point out is that their all the trauma that they experienced, their kids will never experience it. They're aware of it because they know what we do and things like that. But um, they'll never, their lives are so normal as to be so boring. I mean, they're obsessed with BTS or playing basketball or all those normal things. And no, they'll never touch the kinds of lives that their parents had.
I love looking forward. I look forward to it. Going to the
Yes.
voice. That's my favorite thing. And I think a lot of it is, one, I get out of the house for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the other is just to hear the stories.
Yeah.
And it takes a strong person to get up in front of that many people to tell their story.
Yeah.
There's some ones that literally are in my mind, remember the whole thing, and it gives I applaud them for getting up there and sharing that. And I
Mm-hmm.
know they don't feel like that they need an applause for it because it's their life,
Right.
but at the
Right.
same time, it does take a strong person to get through
Yeah.
something and then share it and use it as a
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I applaud
Um,
the people that work with you. Got to believe that
yeah. The
are past.
the alumni are just amazing. Their ability to adapt and grow from everything that happened to them.
Mhm.
That's what, the other thing I love about watching my kids. They are, and I can be objective about this, they're some of the finest people I know because of what they were through
Right.
and how they've come out. Um, they're empathetic, they're understanding, they relate well to other people. They're extraordinary. I consider them, really inspirational.
So the last thing is, why don't you tell everybody, and then when I put this together, I'll put it up on the screen. What is a way, how do they find you? So I put it up on the screen. I'll put up your website or phone number. That way they can
Sure.
contact.
So the easiest thing is the website, yougotabelieve.org. That has all the phone numbers. It has information about our classes, which are temporarily on hold in terms of any in-person classes. But they're given at the, they don't use LGBT, they use GLBT, I think, where the network is in Hop Hog, right? Is that how you say it?
LGBT Network.
LGBT network. That's where the classes are normally given on a Monday evening from 6 to 9. And again, we just welcome people to come in, learn about it. Once the hiatus is passed, we'll be starting up, I think, another series, and it'll be starting from class 1. They're for information. Get this off your list of things you might want to do. Just come and learn about it. So the
Awesome.
photos are all there. Nicole Hayward is the lead trainer there. Richard is the alumni, and it's a phenomenal experience. And you meet some amazing, amazing people that become part of your support network as well.